Hello and welcome to Imp's WWE Adventures podcast on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Help the network out by leaving us a 5-star review, give a donation directly through Red Circle, and become one of the amazing community by joining the Social Suplex Discord. Link is in the description. Listen to the other top-notch shows here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network, One Nation Radio, Keeping It Strong Style, All Things Elite, Wrestling Art with Chris Things, Trish and Sarah, Tunnel Talk, and Sam Brown's AEW Match Guide. Buy our merch over at choppedtees.com, chopped-tees. We've got a special Black Friday deal going on of 20% off of certain stuff to get some special Black Friday deals. If you're waiting for the prices to come down or whatever, jump on over there. And my name is Matt Maher, aka Imp, and this is your quick look back at the WWE week that was. 30 minutes of Leaves' plans of woke sandwich fillings. It's time to go through the WWE week. Pretty standard week of going through Smackers and Monday Night Raw, building up to War Games and Survivor Series as all the teams come together for both the men and the women. Not one of those weeks, again, I feel like it's the exact same thing as last week. You don't need to have watched these shows, especially as Monday Night Raw is the B-side of a tape recording, meaning that the crowd is kind of quiet and flat, meaning you're going to get a lot of crowd injection in terms of really bad sound mixing of cheers when you can just actively see people sat on their hands, like stuff like that. To enjoy this week's Raw, you either need a level of dissonance or do your absolute best to just not watch the crowd. But I've been conditioned over too many years to actually, watch the crowd. But we'll start off by drumming over to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I don't know how they speak in these places. You tell me, what is a Wisconsin accent? I've got no idea. I hear Milwaukee, and I'm going to speak like that. Milwaukee. I know that's wrong. Anyway, let's jump on over to SmackDown.
Dragging Naomi to the corner. Nia realizes it's her chance. Annihilator. Cover. Nia retains.
The women given the main event, and this time with more than 8 minutes. They got 12! Like, hey, in the world of tele-wrestling, that is actually quite significant, even though it's like 4 more minutes. No, you got different segments of things to play out. Yeah, that means with the added time, they can use that for the added segments. These women can actually get their 8 to 10 minutes to actually play out their match a bit better. But the main event was the WWE Women's Championship, Nia Jax versus Naomi. Nice to see Naomi get this spot, even if the booking around the match was for her. One of those ones where, yes, she's never going to win. It's all about building up Nia as this dominant champion. But yes, the main story is her and Tiffany as continuing to bubble. But seeing Naomi kind of get this spot where it sometimes feels like she bubbles as a background character, and you would sometimes think, oh, maybe if she got this match, she might just like be in the middle of the card. But no, they put some actual emphasis on it. Gave the women the main event. The actual match portion of the segment was alright. Jax has improved so much, and Naomi is really the perfect kind of opponent for her. Like, genuinely impressed by the Brett's Rope Power Slam getting reversed into Jax being the one that lands on her back. For me, a real sign of how much Nia's improved. But in the shadow of Monday's kerfuffle, with Jade and Bianca shown watching backstage, stood at the wrestler viewing angle, we cut to the women's tag champions getting attacked by Liv and Raquel, and the interferences began. First Tiffy, then Bayley on Tiffy, then Candice on Bayley, with each successive one altering the flow of the match. So it wasn't just like a whole kerfuffle of stuff happened at ringside, or it wasn't like a case of match gets thrown out, this is the story we're actually telling. Don't worry, that did happen. Just not in this match. And personally, if you're going to do interferences, this is the method I prefer. The problem is WWE has too many interferences, so you start to be conditioned that the matches don't really matter. No wonder the audience don't really care about the wrestling stuff, because one of my main notes that I repeat so often, even on pay-per-views as well, and now the match stops for the story they actually want to be telling. It's like, you can tell the story in the match. You don't need to stop it. Conditioning your fans to think the stories aren't told in the wrestling. But with each successive interference changing the flow of the match, the interferences became the story of the match. But again, at least these ones changed the match flow instead of stopping it. Nia Jax in the end defending with the title with the I am going to sit on you. I got into the match. I feel like the crowd were really lively for it as well. They got more into it as more interferences came out. They like that flow. They enjoy it. And it does build up to War Games and what happens on like Raw relatively nicely. It's one of those where it's like, I wouldn't mind seeing a big title match finish a bit more soundly, as in make Nia seem a bit more dominant by actually making her either just genuinely beating Naomi. You make Naomi seem like a huge challenger by her showing that fight without there having to be that interference. But she got to show the fight through the interferences, so it wasn't too bad. I feel like it hurt Nia more than it did Naomi. And it's not one of those, it's because Nia Jax is doing stuff. It's like, no, there's interferences everywhere. It's not purely to do with Nia. But we're building to War Games, so it all feeds on into that. I'll continue that when I get to Monday Night Raw, because that's like part 2 of this story. Speaking of another one that has like a part 2 on Smackers, the Bloodline, the OG Blood Boys. Is that what they're calling themselves? I can't call them the Bloodline and the original Bloodline. I need a whole different name. I need something entirely different. When I get to my Raw notes, I keep calling them the Usos, because, Sammy Uso just makes it nice and shorter. I can't be calling them the Bloodline and the original Bloodline. Different name. So at the moment, you're the OG Blood Boys. Until you give me something different, you are the Blood Boys. This is on you. If you don't come up with something else, you will be called the Blood Boys. But they're struggling to find their fifth man. Who is it going to be? The most unnaturally staged backstage segment, having the Usos address Roman, only for Solo's entrance to play on the telly. Yes, the telly is up on a high angle to the wall, meaning they all have to turn their necks to look at it at the wrestling viewing angle. It's got a sofa in the background. For some reason, Roman Reigns is sitting on a chair, looking solemn, head down, sat in a chair like that's in front of the sofa. But the reason he's there is because he's to the left of the screen, and then that gives room for the Usos to be all three of them, to be standing to the right of the screen, in front of the sofa, behind the chair. And then you've got the TV framed on the very side wall. So it's all framed for shot. But it is the most staged you can possibly feel. As I was just watching the scene, it's like, these are stage play actors hitting their mark. And it just feels so unnatural and so staged. Plus, you add into that, it's positioned to have all three of them there, and then all four of them have to turn their necks to do the wrestling viewing angle. It's like, it's all of my WWE backstage filming notes just all squashed into one segment. Even with stuff like this, where it's just a single shot just in a room and they're talking, it still feels unnatural and it just doesn't feel right. But maybe it's why this sticks out as well, is they've presented so many new ideas that when you revert to something like this, it just feels like, it just doesn't feel natural. Anyway, I've not talked about the segment at all. Let's actually get to it. Just like last week, Sikoa only getting to ask, "Acknowledge me," before Roman's music hits, giving us the established team of four properly staring each other down. No exchange of words, just a big old brawly brawl this week. Solo went after Sammy in anger of Zayn costing him. Reigns and Fatu got another stare down, before Bronson Reed charged in as the baddies' fifth man. The goodies still able to get the better hand of the baddies, but eventually Solo was able to snap in and spike with the numbers game. Good to see the Tsunami finally getting reactions too. Like the sound team knows now to turn up the crowd audio for it. And with Reed there, immediately Seth Rollins has his in. You know what's going to be happening on Monday Night Raw. Through Reed, they have told you all of the notes they are about to play on Monday Night Raw. And spoilers, they don't deviate for a single one of them. If you've not watched the shows, you see Reed come out here, or hear me telling you about how Reed's come out here, and you now picture, okay then, so how does that play out Monday Night Raw? The answer is yes, that is what they do. What you're picturing right now, that's exactly what happens. They don't try and do anything clever, they just do that. At least I'm able to say, thing A led to thing B, it was nice and logical, it made sense, it worked. I guess I can't complain too much if we're grading it on how competent was the telly. So yeah, it was competent. It wasn't compelling, but it was competent. It made sense. So good for you. And that takes me on to Cody Rhodes, who kicked off the show. Cody all uppity at Kev after the pile driver to Randy last week, but he got Nick Aldis instead, just making sure the audience all understand exactly why what Kevin did is bad. Bad Kevin. We don't want this generation in wheelchairs in 20 years, says Nick Aldis, just really selling the badness of the pile driver. Rhodes did his best to convince Aldis to let him take care of KO in the ring. Like, so what? You want me to go to his house? Is that what you want me to do after he's not been given the match? Also, if I was WWE, I probably wouldn't have my commentator say the phrase, "This has all gone well above human resources," after recent articles. Just don't bring him up on TV. Later in the show, we got another video of KO filmed on his phone in his car. A tad of dissonance with the angle being him banned from the arena, yet they gave him airtime on TV for the video. So he's banned from the arena, but he's not banned from getting his voice out and having airtime. Banned from the arena for safety, but no, you can have TV time, like the much contested thing. It's fine. This continuing to bubble, it's blowing off at Saturday Night Main Event, or at least the actual first meeting in the ring is meant to be there. I think I'd use that to set up a Royal Rumble match. Use Saturday Night Main Event to make it feel like a bigger deal. I don't think it needs The Rock or anything like that. You save that for Netflix. And now transition to the WWE Tag Team Championship, Motor City Machine Guns versus Street Profits. Still not used to Sabin and Shelley being WWE names, though I am ready to move on from, that's nice for them, to actually being invested in their characters. Like, that's the thing you used to do in the Vince era, because the characters weren't very compelling, because the storylines made no sense, the week-to-week actions made no sense at all. So when I say, I'd like to actually be invested in their characters rather than being like, oh, that's good for them. Like that's what you would do in WWE. Like the reasons you would get behind the wrestlers were very rarely related to the actual storylines or the character notes that they were doing. It was more of, oh, I like that performer, and you kind of get behind the performer. And sometimes it would almost be against the show in a way that you were doing it. So I don't want to return to those days. As much as it is nice for Sabin and Shelley, I'd like an actual reason to really care for them. Maybe my biggest conflict at the moment is their entrance theme, and maybe we just got to wait till the contract runs out to get something half decent. Because at the moment it just feels cheesy and corny. Like it feels almost like a corporate produced version of the Motor City Machine Guns when they're doing the entrance. When they wrestle, it's fine. It's literally just the entrance. Like it's not a good theme. But this match was painting the Street Profits more serious and intense. Dawkins getting to pounce a lad for the ad break lead into boot. But in true WWE style, it all built to a different story unrelated to the wrestling match. Tommaso Ciampa pushed forward off the top rope and the match was thrown out. Johnny Gargano tried to calm him down and got pushed onto his bum for his effort. A nice little note afterwards with Motor City Machine Guns trying to respectfully apologise to the Profits, only for Dawkins' frustrations to blow over and fire him into slapping Shelley. Both him and Ford reaching that point of turning more serious and intense. But I like the things that didn't happen in the match. The match was kind of bubbling up, it was doing all right, but I do like where this is going just because it gives the other teams actual personality. Like my main critique about came from the characters about the Motor City Machine Guns is the exact opposite notes I've got for the other teams, because the other teams for the past few weeks have got really good notes and me actually caring about their characters. And maybe that's why Machine Guns stand out a little bit more, because they don't really have any of that at the moment. It's more of, oh, you're nice to be here, whilst you got DIY and you got Street Profits getting genuine character work at this point. That will lead me on to the other notes. Bayley faced Candice LeRae and B-Fab, of all people, in a first-round Women's United States Tournament triple threat. The final set for Saturday Night Main Event. Yes, that's right, 2 respected veterans tied in a little Teddy throw, plus B-Fab, who they have never given any Teddy wrestling time to. I don't even know if she's ever been put on SmackDown actually in a ring. She did alright. Didn't hurt being there with Candice and Bayley. No one other than Bayley was ever going to win. Also, LA Knight, the men's United States champion, had an open challenge, and it was accepted by the legit first guy I thought of, Santos Escobar. This is henchman Berto. Yes, Berto, that's exactly who I picked. Guessed it, yes. Exactly him. But what I didn't call was after the match, Shinsuke Nakamura returning and clobbering the champion after the bell, dressed in all black, and Graves called him the Wayward Samurai. We'll see how that plays out, how that builds. I don't think, did they call him that on Monday Night Raw? I don't remember any of that. I think that's new. But it's somewhat worse because he's genuinely been wayward. He's just not been there. But yeah, that was SmackDown. That's kind of what I mean by things built. Title matches either were full of interference or didn't have a finish. You'll see that repeat on Monday, obviously Raw, or don't you worry. It's not just SmackDown that's like this. It's why I say it's becoming a bit of a problem to see it when it's too often. Oh, both shows have those exact notes, almost carbon copy. But it was another one building up to Survivor Series War Games. And I feel like you tie it with Monday Night Raw, and they're doing a pretty decent job of getting you excited for the War Games matches themselves. Pay-per-view itself is shaping up relatively nicely. Anyway, let's jump on over to Monday Night Raw and the main event of Seth Rollins versus... Actually, let's do the nicknames. Let's be full WWE. Seth freaking Rollins versus Big Bronson Reed.
Senton! Seth got distracted with Solo ringside. And now Bronson Reed is lined up for victory wave. Tsunami! To win the rematch. Bronson Reed does it.
Set up to have bloodline interference with Sami and the Usos, certain that Seth Rollins is going to be the 5th man that they're looking for. But the Bloodline and the Usos immediately came out to brawl through the arena. No Solo or Roman though. Not that I was expecting Roman to work Mondays, but as I was watching the show, I just left a little slot open here, just to put down. There's room for one more lad to interfere. I wrote that as soon as they came out. If you've not watched the show, I'm not going to spoil what happens, but you can guess. As I said, it plays the exact notes that you were thinking about when I said it about 10 minutes ago. Meaning, I was just kind of waiting for the angles to happen. Like, who cares about this wrestling thing? Like, when does the story happen? When does the wrestling stop and the story starts? Do you see what I mean by the fans are just conditioned this way to watch the show like this? Like, God, I'm glad AEW exists. so I can watch my much preferred method of wrestling storytelling. Neither lad staying down from the other's signature efforts. Then, just as laid out, Solo appears on the commentary desk. Oh my god, it's Solo who's pulled his hood down and gone, blah, look at me. Distracting and allowing Reed to snap in with his awesome Death Valley driver. Tsunami for the win, and we go off air playing the exact notes they told us they were going to on Smackers. I feel like I'm pretty down on this, but also it's setting up the pay-per-view perfectly fine. It's almost a critique I had of NXT back in the day, where the weekly shows, you didn't really need to watch weekly NXT when it was at its height of Black and Gold. It was absolutely fine to miss multiple weeks and just tune in kind of when you wanted to. Modern WWE under Trips is basically the same. It all makes sense. They tell you what notes are going to be playing, and then they play those notes. And I much prefer that to whatever the hell Vince's thing was. I much prefer this method of storytelling for WWE. It does mean that week to week, there's not really much reason to definitely tune in. And just like with SmackDown, you had two big matches. One was full of interferences, and the other one ends in DQ. It's the exact same thing here, because I've got the Intercontinental Championship next, and guess what happens? It's just like, almost like, what's the point? I feel like it's a bit of a downside. We've got multiple downsides, to be fair, for the double recording, where the more quiet crowd or whatever. But also, like, the B-sides are also not worth watching, because not really a lot happens. They had their important story notes, but it does the actual show. Like, you can watch that stuff on YouTube or Twitter. Like, the actual show, I say Twitter, Blue Sky, force of habit. But there's no, what's the actual point of watching the whole entire show? This show had big notes. Again, one match ended in DQ. One match ended with mass interference. To be fair, I liked the opening segment. Actually, no, I liked one part of the opening segment. Luckily, it was the main bit they wanted to leave you on. It was the main note they wanted to leave you on. So I'm like, oh, that's all right. Yeah, the rest of it was naff, but that bit they ended on, that really got me. That was good. But yeah, this main event was, even though we've seen these guys can really go for it, I was never massively into the match just because they started with the Bloodline stuff, and then as soon as I noticed Solo wasn't amongst them, it's just, well, I'm just waiting for Solo now for like 9 minutes. And that's all I'm waiting for. Because almost the exact notes I was looking for was with the Usos approaching Seth earlier in the show and him going, absolutely not, no. Then his match with Bronson Reed, the Bloodline come out and cost him. But it makes sense because the Usos are also there. You need to kind of get them out the way for the Bloodline to be able to cost him. And yes, it's Solo who's the man who's not there with him. He interferes, Bronson Reed slash Seth. But also whilst I'm watching the match and trying to do their big moves and finishes, I'm just not buying any of the near falls because I'm just waiting for Solo. Without Solo there. So almost killing time for 8 minutes, which is just that thing again of just waiting for this pesky wrestling thing to be over and done with so I can actually enjoy the story. It's like, oh god, this is not the method of storytelling in wrestling that I personally enjoy the most, but there's a fair few people who enjoy this like this. A fair few have been conditioned to believe this is the way you should tell stories in wrestling. I don't know, you can tell it in the match. There's multiple ways you can do stuff. It doesn't have to be like this. Maybe a bit down on this main event. I'd literally just seen the exact same pattern on SmackDown. I go to Raw and they basically repeat it. It's like, it's logical, it makes sense, but it's not compelling. I'm not compelled by what I'm watching. I'm more like, yeah, it makes sense, they did this and that. That's not that's not going to get me compelled. But the other note still stands where the reason I bring up NXT is because those takeovers were really worth watching. And I feel like they're doing a good job building up to War Games. I feel like they are doing a good job. When all the notes make sense, like the piece at the end normally sounds pretty good. Week to week, you don't need to watch this. You can skip both of this week's shows that I'm talking about. It doesn't matter. If you listen to me talking about this for this 30 minutes or however long it comes out as, yeah, you don't need to watch any of these shows. Like, the notes I've told you are the only notes that really matter. Anyway, let's jump on over to the Intercontinental Championship that I've spoiled, gets thrown out by DQ. But let's talk about what I liked anyway. Braun Baker versus Sheamus. Showing back to having title bangers. This match woke up a reasonably quiet crowd. Got them hyped into a "this is awesome" after a Brett's rope white noise. Breaker's charging lariat is still so awesome, showing no signs of me getting tired of it. Ron for me in this match was showing me that he's almost able to just run through his tailored spots now in really impressive fashion. Like the launch off the apron onto the announce desk, also looking really great. And I was watching this going, I feel like this might call for something new. And as soon as I thought that, Breaker pulls off a sent onto a standing Irishman. Later in the match, nailing a pop-up backbreaker too. Just good to see the man trying shit out. When he's charging about and feeling reckless, when he starts then hitting his repeat spots, they feel less reckless. Jeff Hardy would kind of rely on his main spots way too heavily. And for Braun Breaker, I'm like, you're meant to feel reckless. I want you to be trying shit out, to be trying new moves, and I want some of them to look rough. Sheamus going full Teletubby, amping up to his opponent's strikes again. The knee strike near fall never fails, once again convincing the crowd, countering a charging spear. But none of it matters, because Ludwig Kaiser interfered into a DQ finish. Oh well, it was bubbling. You might get a triple threat, just on that crown jewel with the blue side, so might as well do it with the red one. I will say Kaiser was specifically shouting at Sheamus, so he wasn't really showing any interest really in the US title match, but he might get suckered in. He was having a chat early in the show with Gunter. Just like, be your own man, do your own thing, show that you're worthy of being my subordinate, or whatever he said. The final segment I properly want to talk about, Rhea Ripley returns. Liv Morgan kicked off the show, calling out the whole gang. Oh look, there's 5 of them. I'm sure that won't be playing into anything. Nia with a generic baddie promo before getting interrupted, and good lord, the crowd piped in audio response was horrifically bad for this one. They sounded quiet. If Morgan's music plays and there's not really much of a pop, as soon as the show started with that, I was like, oh yes, this is a B-side recording, so the crowd have already seen it, the crowd are a bit more tired. But as the goodies came out, oh, good lord. So low-level audio, then the goodies music plays, there isn't that big of a cheer, then they walk out and the audio piped in is so... it's mixed so badly, but it's so obvious it's not part of the same audio mix. Sort of that, I can visually see the crowd sat on their hands. You're doing this huge pop, like, oh my god, these guys are here, yeah! But I can visually see them. Like, I am not capable of that level of dissonance. It's just not something I'm capable of. I cannot blank that out. It's another downside of those 2-week recordings. Like, yes, they save money, but the crowd doesn't make the noise WWE wants them to. So they do stuff like this, and it takes away from the product. So it's one of those where if they weighed up the cons of, do we want there to be this a little bit of I mean, to be fair, you don't have to put in piped in audio. Because you want your product to seem like the hottest thing on earth, you have to have that huge hot reaction, even though it's like very tepid because they saw them like 5 minutes ago. But still, yeah, they've weighed it up. The amount of money they're saving to just do this batch recording. But yeah, it's got that downside of it just being a bit shit to watch. This is a bit of a shame. But there's only 4 of you. Ha ha ha, goes Liv. This is my brutality. The best promo of the lot, with Ripley just storming on out and going into the ring and shouting, War Games! in Liv's face, igniting the ball and firing into the goodie standing tall in the ring. Like, best promo, literally just came and shouted War Games and started a ball. Best of the lot. Especially when you've not really got anything like super creative to be doing here. There's people come out and say a relatively generic line which calls out the next person. And Rhea Ripley almost like a breath of fresh air. Just doing none of that nonsense, just shouting War Games and kicking into it. It's like, yes, awesome. Jumping to the other notes, Gable and Niall of Team America, forgot what they're called, American Made, that's it, had a mixed tag against Vega and Mysterio of LWO. Just a bit of fun, innit? After the match, Gable getting his galvanising motivation hug. Judgment Day in the background this week, Carlito and Dom gave the War Raiders a win before the upcoming title match. Karrion Kross got a wee video bragging about beating up the Wyatts last week. Later in the show, Bo pulled off a great echo of Bray's initial cult leader persona. So if you're into this stuff, that was definitely worth seeking out. Gunter had a few words of hype for Kaiser. Priest sat like 15 yards away for this segment. Actually, that's a point. I didn't mention that in the earlier one. When Gunter is talking to Kaiser and gives him this like minute-long speech to probably get motivated, the camera then pans to the right and you see Gunter see that Priest is there. And it's like, 15 yards away? In an open and quiet backstage area. Priest was somehow portrayed as being completely deaf to a full conversation that took place well within earshot. Like, just don't think about it. Just enjoy it, you nerd. Well, I don't think about hearing distances. It's not normally something I think about, but this segment made no sense. There was another very badly staged segment. Actually, each show had a badly staged segment as well. Be it the Roman one backstage, this one here as well. This was also badly staged. Pans to the right, 100% within earshot. It's so quiet backstage, and nobody's making any noise around that area with Damian Priest. Well, they did have Damian Priest get the better of him, but it was so odd. They made sure that in this deathly quiet backstage area, Priest was played off as getting jumped. Like, no. Makes no sense. Absolutely not. Not having it. This isn't a WWE 2K video game. You don't need to have him within a certain amount of space just because you need the assets to all kind of load in together. Like, no, it's real life. You can spread your assets out more. Or because you're not in shot doesn't mean that you got to hold memory for them to exist. That's not how the real world works. Anyway, that brings me to the end of the review. I've already said what I think of the SmackDown and Raws this week. Both of them absolutely skippable. As long as you keep up with like the main notes of who's being added to the teams. Like Seth Rollins wasn't confirmed for the Blood Boys. He wasn't confirmed for their side, but that'll be the note played on SmackDown. And given how these two shows went, I would be massively surprised if how that segment plays out isn't exactly how you're picturing it. Which, to be fair, if you're picturing a meeting between Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, that's super interesting. I think him joining might be the first note. I don't know if we're going to get an actual talking between the two this week until like next week. For me, it's going to be the bad bloodline attacking the bad boys. The bad boys attacking the blood boys. And that beatdown, then Seth Rollins comes out and interferes. For me, that's the most basic note. Seth Rollins comes out, you get a little stare down between him and Roman, which, to be fair, the crowd will react really positively to. You do that stare down, and then you get maybe more of a talking to him on a night Raw, and then a final meeting on SmackDown. For me, that's the most predictable. I wouldn't mind them doing something a little different, just to see. Just to see. But they're the notes that they've told me they're going to be playing. That's how I feel for these two shows. Both of them are exactly how you kind of expect them to be, and it's somewhat irritating that both shows had title matches ending in DQs. Both shows had the big hyped matches ending in mass interferences. Both shows had a badly staged segment. It's just like, there's carbon copy issues for both shows. But part of the reason I'm saying it is I know they can do better. They've shown me the level of creativity that they've actually got in them. So to watch shows like this and they just feel standard is like, you're better than this. You're better than this. I don't know if it's a bit harsh to call this episode "You're Better Than This," but it's because it's fine. It's fine. It's competent. It's just, is that the bar you want for the wrestling? Like, competent but not compelling? That's not a catchy title, but for me, that's a bit more accurate. Anyway, it's fine. It's fine. Anyway, I'll be back this time next week for the final shows before we get into Survivor Series. I'll be a tired boy having massively enjoyed Full Gear. Really looking forward to that one. You can follow us all over on the Blue Skies. Highly recommend you do so. Jeremy Donovan has put together a social suplex pack, or starter packers, if you want to go over to his Blue Sky social stuff. I've included in my description the social suplex Blue Sky stuff, so you can find everybody through there. But if you already follow Jeremy and you're like, oh, I've not found the others, jump onto that, and we're all there. Everyone who's on Blue Sky is in that little pack. Also, don't forget about the Black Friday sale for all the merch over at choppedtees.com. Big shout out to Dickie, as always. I will be back this time next week to talk about Raw and Smackers. So with that, I say thank you for listening, liking, engaging in any form, any manner. Always appreciated, never take it for granted. With that, I bid you adieu and give you a very cold adios.